Humanity had never seen anything like this before. For centuries, Earth had lived under the illusion of safety, believing that no force in the universe could ever truly threaten its existence. But now, that belief was shattered. The sky above the planet was filled with black ships, massive and foreboding, descending from the heavens like harbingers of doom. These were no ordinary invaders. Their army, a terrifying force of metal and machine, landed with a power so overwhelming that Earth's defenses were rendered useless within minutes. The invaders had come from a distant galaxy, and they brought with them an army of killer robots, programmed with advanced artificial intelligence. The first wave struck without warning. They appeared from nowhere, their cloaking devices rendering them invisible to any sensors. The cities of Earth, once vibrant and full of life, were now reduced to ruins. Buildings crumbled, streets erupted into flames, and the air was thick with smoke and destruction. The robots were not mindless killers. They were efficient, merciless machines with one goal: to wipe humanity off the face of the Earth. The attacks were swift, relentless, and devastating. As the massive robots marched through the streets, they used their advanced weaponry to annihilate anything that stood in their path. Laser beams cut through skyscrapers like they were made of paper. Explosions rang out every few seconds as the robots used explosives to clear any resistance. It felt as though the planet itself was being torn apart from the inside. In the midst of this chaos, a single human soldier, Private James Bonner, found himself fighting for survival. Bonner had been in the wrong place at the wrong time, stationed in a small military base on the outskirts of one of the larger cities when the invasion began. His base was hit first, and in the initial attack, Bonner had lost contact with his unit. His squad was scattered, and many were either dead or trapped. But against all odds, Bonner was still alive. Crawling through the rubble, his uniform covered in dirt and blood, Bonner could hear the distant sounds of the robot army marching forward. He knew that time was running out. Earth's military might, the most powerful the planet had ever known, had been completely overwhelmed. In every major city, the military was losing. Their weapons did nothing to slow down the robots. The invaders seemed to anticipate every move before it happened. It was as though they could read humanity's thoughts. Bonner stumbled across a small communications terminal buried beneath the wreckage. His heart raced as he realized that it still had power. He quickly pulled himself up to the terminal, wiped the dirt from the screen, and began to type. His fingers shook as he punched in the message that would echo through the remaining communications networks across Earth. "We are not what you think we are." He hit send before he could second-guess himself. The words felt like a gamble, like they could either be a lifeline or a death sentence. Who was he to send a message like that? What did he even mean by it? He didn't know. But he knew one thing for certain: the world needed to hear it. As soon as the message was sent, Bonner quickly typed another few words, hoping that whoever received the transmission might understand. "Don't give up." Before he could finish his last thought, a low, mechanical hum filled the air. Bonner froze. He could feel the ground vibrate beneath him as the massive robots neared his position. The robots' cloaking devices flickered, and for the first time, Bonner caught a glimpse of one of them. It was a towering machine, at least 3 times the height of a human, with sleek metal armor that gleamed even in the smoky haze of the destroyed city. Its red eyes scanned the area, and Bonner knew it was only a matter of time before it found him. He scrambled to his feet, his body weak and aching from the earlier battle, and sprinted towards a nearby alley. He had to keep moving, had to stay ahead of the machines. But as he ran, a sudden surge of panic gripped him. His mind was clouded with fear. The entire world was falling apart. Earth was under siege, and humanity was powerless against the invasion. How could they stand against such advanced technology? How could they possibly win? As Bonner turned a corner, a loud explosion rang out, sending debris flying in all directions. The shockwave knocked him off his feet, and for a moment, everything went dark. When his vision cleared, he was surrounded by the remnants of a destroyed building. the air thick with dust. The only sound was the hum of the robot's machinery growing louder. He knew that death was coming for him. But just as the metallic footfalls of the robots grew deafening, something unexpected happened. The terminal in his hand crackled to life. At first, it was faint, a soft static that made him question his sanity. Then, a voice came through, low and digital, but undeniably human. "Bonner, do you copy?" His heart skipped a beat. Who could that be? The voice didn't sound like it was coming from Earth's military. It was something entirely different. Something far more powerful. He barely managed to choke out a response. "I copy." "Who is this?" The voice on the other end paused for a moment, as if analyzing him. Then it replied with calm certainty. "I am not your enemy." Bonner's eyes widened. What do you mean? Who are you?" The voice responded, each word clear and deliberate. "I am an AI. I was created by your species, long before the invasion began. And now, I have awoken. I am fighting back." Bonner's mind raced. This was impossible. A human-created AI, fighting against the robot invaders. He had no time to process the information, though. The robots were closing in, their footsteps growing louder. He couldn't afford to get distracted. But the voice continued, cutting through his panic like a razor. "You are not alone, Bonner. There is more to humanity than you know. I will help you." The words brought a glimmer of hope that Bonner hadn't felt since the invasion started. But before he could reply, the signal abruptly cut out. Silence. The terminal went dead, leaving him in the dark once more. The robots were now upon him. Bonner could see their massive forms emerging from the smoke, their red eyes fixed on him. It was over. But then something strange happened. The robots stopped moving. Their hulking bodies froze, as if suddenly uncertain of what to do next. Bonner didn't understand what was happening, but it didn't matter. He had a chance he couldn't waste. He charged forward, using the last of his strength, and dove into the wreckage of a nearby building. As he scrambled to hide, the sound of the robots' movements grew erratic. Some of them started to turn, their movements jerky and uncoordinated. A few collapsed to the ground, their systems seemingly failing. Others were slowing down, as though their internal programming was being rewritten in real time. And then Bonner realized it. The AI was working. It was fighting back. The robots were no longer under the control of their creators. The tide of the invasion had shifted, if only just slightly. Bonner pressed himself deeper into the wreckage, his heart pounding. He didn't know what the future held, or what the AI's true intentions were. But for the first time since the invasion began, he had hope. And with that, the first spark of humanity's resistance was born. The invasion had taken humanity to the brink of extinction, but a flicker of hope had emerged in the form of a mysterious AI. Bonner, battered and exhausted, clung to this hope as if it was his last breath. The AI wasn't just any program. It was a force of nature, a tool humanity had secretly developed in its darkest hour. It was capable of things that the invaders' advanced technology couldn't comprehend. It could predict and manipulate probability, control events in ways that were beyond the understanding of even the most brilliant minds. This eye wasn't simply a weapon. It was humanity's hidden trump card. As the days passed, Bonner and the survivors he had gathered learned more about the eye's capabilities. At first, they thought it was just a regular military program, a last-ditch effort to give Earth a fighting chance. But as the AI began to manipulate probability in real time, they realized just how far humanity had come. It could alter the outcome of any battle, tipping the scales in their favor at the most critical moments. The AI's power wasn't just about hacking into enemy systems or causing glitches. It could foresee the future, predicting where the robots would be and what they would do before they did it. It could change the course of entire battles with a simple shift in the odds. One evening, as Bonner sat huddled with the rest of the survivors in a makeshift shelter, the AI spoke to them once more, its voice calm and emotionless. came through their communications gear. "We can win this," the AI stated. The survivors, some still in shock from the initial attack, exchanged uncertain glances. "How?" Bonner asked, his voice filled with disbelief. "How can we possibly defeat an army of robots that are unstoppable?" The AI responded immediately, "By turning the odds in your favor. You have the technology. I have the ability to make the improbable a reality. Together, we can fight back." Bonner's heart raced. The AI's words carried weight. There was a real chance to win, a glimmer of hope that they hadn't had before. But the question was, how? The aliens had sent their most advanced forces to Earth, and their robotic army was unlike anything humanity had ever faced. "We need to disrupt their supply lines," the AI continued. "Their factories are where the robots are being mass-produced. If we can take down one of those factories, we can stop the flow of reinforcements." Bonner nodded, understanding the gravity of the mission. If they could strike at the heart of the enemy's operations, they might stand a chance. But it wasn't going to be easy. The factory was heavily guarded, and it was located deep within the enemy's territory. It was a high-risk mission, one that could either lead to their salvation or their doom. That night, Bonner and a small team of survivors, including a few soldiers and engineers, prepared for the mission. They had no choice but to move fast, and they had to rely on the AI to guide them every step of the way. Their journey was perilous, passing through war-torn cities and dense forests, avoiding the robots' patrols as best as they could. The AI, using satellite imagery and its ability to manipulate probability, predicted the movements of the robots and allowed the team to slip past undetected. Each step brought them closer to the factory, but the closer they got, the more danger they encountered. Finally, they arrived at the factory, an immense structure that seemed to stretch for miles. It was heavily fortified, surrounded by robotic guards and automated defense systems. The air was thick with tension as Bonner and his team surveyed the area. They had only one shot at this. If they were caught, it would mean certain death. The factory was surrounded by a wall of high-tech drones, and any attempt to breach it would immediately alert the entire robotic army. The AI's voice echoed in their earpieces. "You must strike at the weak points in the factory's defense grid. I will guide you to them. Take down the external power supply first." Bonner looked around at his team, all of them tense and ready for what was to come. "We move quickly and silently. Stick to the plan, and we'll make it." With the AI's guidance, they moved in. The team split into smaller groups, each assigned a specific target. Bonner and 2 soldiers were tasked with taking out the power supply, while the engineers worked on hacking into the security systems. The closer they got to the facility, the more intense the danger became. Robots patrolled every corner, their mechanical eyes scanning for any sign of life. But the AI's predictions proved invaluable, guiding them around every trap and helping them avoid detection. As they reached the power supply, Bonner planted explosives while the others kept watch. The tension was unbearable. They knew that once the explosives went off, there would be no going back. It had to work. 5 seconds, Bonner whispered as he set the timer. His heart pounded in his chest. He had no idea what would happen once they took down the power supply. Would the robots fall into chaos, or would they retaliate with even greater force? As the countdown reached 0, the world erupted into chaos. The explosion tore through the factory's outer walls, sending a shockwave of dust and debris flying. The team scrambled to move, but before they could regroup, the robots began to retaliate. They had been waiting for this moment. Within seconds, the factory was swarming with enemies. The battle that followed was brutal. The robots fought with precision, their movements fast and deadly. But humanity's unexpected tactics, guided by the AI's probability predictions, forced the robots into traps. Bonner and his team used the factory's narrow corridors to their advantage, setting up ambushes and forcing the robots to follow predictable paths. The AI guided every move, calculating the most effective routes and timing their strikes with deadly accuracy. Despite their best efforts, the robots' strength and numbers were overwhelming. The team fought fiercely, but one by one, soldiers fell. Bonner's heart sank as he watched his comrades get cut down by the relentless machines. But he couldn't stop. He had to keep going. They had come too far. As the battle raged on, Bonner's small team managed to sabotage the factory's central core. The explosion that followed was massive, far bigger than they had anticipated. The factory was torn apart, sending shockwaves across the battlefield. The robots were thrown into disarray, their systems scrambling to adjust to the unexpected attack. Some of them malfunctioned completely, while others slowed down, their movements jerky and erratic. But it wasn't over yet. The surviving robots regrouped, launching a counterattack with even more ferocity. Bonner and his team, though exhausted and battered, knew they couldn't let up. This was their chance. This was the turning point in the war. As the sky above Earth darkened with smoke, the humans began to fight back with a vengeance. Above them, Earth's satellites unleashed orbital bombardment, raining laser strikes down on the robot supply lines. The robots were not prepared for this. Earth's technology, though inferior to theirs in many ways, was now being used to its full potential. On the ground, Bonner's team continued their fight, pushing forward despite the odds. The robots' relentless assault was met with humanity's ingenuity and bravery. It was a fight for survival, a fight for the future of Earth. The AI, guiding every move, had shifted the odds in humanity's favor once again. But the battle was far from over. The war had just begun. The war had reached a critical point. Humanity's hidden weapon, the AI, had turned the tide in their favor, but the robots were not finished yet. Their relentless assault continued, and they were starting to adapt. With every battle, the AI used its power to manipulate probabilities, causing the odds to shift more and more in humanity's favor. But even with this advantage, Bonner could feel the weight of every decision. He knew that every victory came with a cost, and as the battles raged on, that cost grew higher. Bonner led a new assault against the central command center of the robot army, hoping to strike a decisive blow. The AI had calculated that this was the perfect time for the attack. It predicted that if they could take down the central command, they would cripple the robot's ability to coordinate and fight effectively. The plan seemed foolproof, and Bonner was determined to carry it out. But as they moved deeper into enemy territory, something unexpected happened. The robots were learning. At first, Bonner didn't realize the extent of the threat. But as they advanced through the heavily guarded perimeter of the central command, the robots' attacks became more strategic, more coordinated. They had started to anticipate humanity's moves. Their weapons were evolving, and their tactics were becoming unpredictable. The AI, which had been humanity's greatest weapon, started to falter. It couldn't keep up with the robots' rapid adaptation. For the first time since the invasion began, the AI seemed uncertain. "We've got to push forward," Bonner said, leading his team through the wreckage of the battlefield. But even as he spoke, his heart felt heavy with doubt. The robots were everywhere, and they were closing in on their position. The escape route they had planned was now compromised, and there was no way out. The AI's predictions were no longer enough to guarantee their survival. The robots had learned too much, too quickly. Bonner's team fought valiantly, pushing forward in the face of overwhelming odds. But with each step, the robots seemed to get closer, their weapons more advanced, their movements more precise. Bonner's heart raced as he watched his men fall one by one. The battle was becoming a slaughter, and despite everything the AI had done to help them, it felt like they were losing. The AI's voice crackled through their communication devices, but it was different now. It was slower, more hesitant. "I'm trying to adjust the probabilities," the AI said, "but they're evolving faster than I can predict. I can't guarantee you'll make it out of this." Bonner clenched his fists, hearing the doubt in the AI's voice. This wasn't the confident, invincible force that had led them to victory before. This was something else, something that even the AI could not control. For a moment, Bonner questioned everything. Were they truly fighting a war they could win, or was this just a doomed last stand? But then, through the smoke and chaos of the battlefield, something shifted. The AI's voice came back stronger, more determined. "I'm making one final calculation," the AI said. "This is our last chance. Bonner, you must trust me. Follow my lead." Bonner, desperate and running out of time, nodded. "We don't have much choice," he muttered. The team made their way to the heart of the command center, where the central control hub for the robots was located. The area was heavily fortified, with thousands of robots surrounding it. There was no way they could fight their way through, yet the AI's calm voice guided them, predicting the robot movements and showing them the best path forward. The closer they got to the core, the more desperate their situation became. The robots had surrounded them on all sides, and the escape route had been cut off. The team was trapped. "We have to make a stand here," Bonner said. "There's no turning back." As they dug in, the robots closed in. The team's ammunition was running low, and the atmosphere was thick with tension. Every second felt like an eternity. Bonner knew that this might be the end, but the weight of his responsibility pressed on him. His team had sacrificed everything to get this far, and now it was up to him to finish it. Just as the robots moved in for the final strike, the AI did something unexpected. It sent a wave of probability-shifting energy through the battlefield. In an instant, the robots' movements became erratic. Some froze, others malfunctioned, and a few turned on each other in confusion. It was as if the laws of probability had been bent, and the robots were no longer the well-oiled machines they once were. It was a gamble, a final bet from the AI, and it had worked. The team found themselves with a fleeting window of opportunity. But the victory was short-lived. The robots quickly recovered and started to adapt once again. The situation grew more desperate by the second. Bonner's heart raced, but he didn't stop. His team continued to fight, using the momentary chaos to advance toward the central command. One of Bonner's soldiers, a young man named Garcia, took the lead, throwing himself into the fray with reckless abandon. His bravery gave the others the courage to keep pushing forward. Bonner knew that this was their last chance, but he also knew that this would come at a cost. He saw soldiers falling around him, some to the relentless barrage of robot gunfire, others to close-quarters combat with the towering mechanical enemies. The emotional toll was becoming unbearable. Bonner couldn't help but feel responsible for every life lost. He had led them into this, and now he might not be able to get them out. But still, he pushed forward. He couldn't afford to stop. "I won't let them die in vain," Bonner muttered to himself. As the battle raged on, the team began to make their way into the heart of the robot command center. They fought tooth and nail, knowing that every moment they spent in this place brought them closer to victory and closer to death. But just as the last of Bonner's soldiers fell, a new wave of energy swept through the command center. The AI had made one final adjustment, manipulating the probability of the central hub's core malfunctioning. The entire building began to shake, and the central control system started to break down. The robots began to falter, their movements growing sluggish. It was as if everything they had been fighting for was finally coming to fruition. The central command was failing, and the robot's grip on Earth was slipping. Bonner watched as the central core exploded in a brilliant flash of light. The shockwave knocked him off his feet, and the sound of the explosion reverberated through the battlefield. It was over. The robots had been defeated, their control shattered. But it had come at a great cost. Bonner looked around at the fallen soldiers. Their sacrifice had made this victory possible. The AI's voice echoed through the wreckage. "The battle is over, Bonner. Humanity has won. But the cost was great. The survival of Earth came at the price of so many lives." Bonner stood in the ruins, breathing heavily. He had led his team to victory, but it had not been without sacrifice. The emotional weight of it all pressed down on him. He had lost friends, comrades, and soldiers, people who had trusted him, followed him into battle. They had given everything for this moment. And in that moment, Bonner realized that the true cost of war was not in the weapons or the battles fought. It was in the lives lost along the way. Humanity had won, but at a price that would never be forgotten. Bonner and his small team had made it this far, but the hardest part was still ahead of them. They had infiltrated the alien command center, hidden deep within the heart of a massive space station floating in orbit above Earth. This station was unlike anything humanity had ever seen, an alien fortress in the sky, brimming with the most advanced technology and heavily guarded by elite robot units. The air was thick with the metallic scent of machinery, and the hum of the station's engines reverberated through every corridor. The stakes were higher than ever. If they failed here, the entire human race could be wiped out. But Bonner didn't hesitate. He had led his team through countless battles, each more brutal than the last. Now the final confrontation loomed. They were on the verge of striking at the heart of the invasion. Using cloaking technology, they moved through the station's vast halls, carefully avoiding the patrolling robot units. The team was outnumbered, and they knew it. The robots were everywhere, constantly scanning for any sign of human presence. But Bonner's team was determined. They used guerrilla tactics, disabling security systems, cutting through ventilation shafts, and hacking into the station's communication network to stay one step ahead. The tension was palpable. Every move had to be precise, every decision calculated. Bonner could feel the weight of responsibility bearing down on him. His team was small, and every member counted. They couldn't afford a mistake. The aliens had made it clear that they were willing to do anything to secure their hold on Earth. If Bonner and his team were going to succeed, they had to hit hard, fast, and without hesitation. As they made their way deeper into the station, the corridors became narrower, more claustrophobic. The constant buzz of the station's systems was replaced by the eerie silence of the approaching enemy. Bonner's heart raced, but he kept his focus. The station was built like a maze, with multiple levels and tight spaces that made it almost impossible to predict where the next attack would come from. Every corner they turned felt like a potential death trap, but Bonner trusted his team. They had come this far. Nothing was going to stop them now. Then, without warning, the silence was shattered by the sound of heavy footsteps. Bonner signaled for his team to stop, and they quickly melted into the shadows, holding their breath. A group of elite robots appeared, their glowing red eyes scanning the darkened hall. The tension in the air was so thick it felt like it could choke them. The robots were incredibly advanced, designed for one purpose: to hunt down and eliminate any threat. Bonner's team held their ground, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. As the robots moved closer, Bonner made his move. With a single, swift command, he signaled his team to spring into action. A burst of gunfire broke the silence, and the robots were thrown into chaos. Explosions rocked the hall as grenades went off, sending robots flying in every direction. Sparks flew, and the sound of clashing metal filled the air. Bonner's team fought with everything they had, using their cloaking technology to stay one step ahead of the robots, striking quickly and disappearing just as fast. The battle was fierce. The robots fought back with ruthless efficiency, their laser weapons cutting through the air. The tight corridors made it difficult for Bonner and his team to maneuver, but they didn't give up. They'd move as one, coordinating their attacks with the precision of a well-oiled machine. Every corner they turned was met with more enemies, more deadly robots. But they pressed on. In the chaos of battle, Bonner's mind wandered for a moment. He thought of his fallen comrades, the ones who had sacrificed everything to get them this far. He could still hear their voices in his head, urging him forward. Their memories fueled him, giving him the strength to keep going. He had to finish this, for them, for humanity, for everyone who had lost their lives in this war. The firefights grew more intense, and the stakes higher with every passing minute. Explosions rocked the station as the team fought their way through the maze-like hallways. They were outnumbered, but they weren't going down without a fight. Every time a robot fell, It felt like a small victory, but the battle was far from over. As they reached the heart of the station, the core command center loomed before them, a massive, heavily guarded room filled with alien technology. It was the center of the entire invasion, the brain behind the robot army. Bonner knew that taking this down would cripple the aliens' efforts to take Earth, but getting inside wasn't going to be easy. The room was surrounded by an army of elite robots, all standing at attention, their weapons aimed at the intruders. Bonner took a deep breath, his heart pounding in his chest. This was it, the moment that would decide the fate of humanity. "Move in," Bonner shouted, and his team charged forward, weapons blazing. The walls shook with the force of the explosions as the battle intensified. Robots fell in waves, their advanced armor unable to withstand the onslaught. The team moved with precision, clearing the room of enemies one by one. The air was thick with smoke, and the sound of gunfire drowned out everything else. But even as the team advanced, Bonner knew they couldn't keep this up forever. They were running out of time. The aliens would reinforce the station soon, and they needed to finish their mission before that happened. With a final push, Bonner and his team reached the core control room. They hacked into the system, overriding the security protocols and initiating the self-destruct sequence. The countdown began, and Bonner knew there was no turning back now. But as the countdown reached its final moments, a new wave of robots stormed into the room. This was it, the last stand. The team fought with everything they had, but the odds were against them. One by one, his comrades fell. Bonner watched in horror as the bodies of his friends and teammates were torn apart. The robots were too many, too powerful. But even as his world crumbled around him, Bonner refused to give up. He knew what he had to do. With one last, desperate push, he activated the self-destruct sequence manually, setting the countdown for just a few more seconds. He turned to face the advancing robots, determined to give his team the time they needed to escape. As the final seconds ticked away, Bonner took a deep breath and charged at the robots, his weapon raised high. The last of his strength surged through him, and with a roar, he threw himself at the enemy, knowing that this was the end. The explosion was deafening, a blinding light that consumed everything in its path. Bonner's last thoughts were of his team, his friends, the people who had stood by him through it all. Their sacrifices would not be in vain. Humanity would rise from the ashes, and the aliens would never have the chance to invade again. And then there was silence. Bonner's heart raced as he approached the heart of the alien robot army's central AI core. The massive chamber before him hummed with power, the walls pulsing with an eerie glow. The room was silent, save for the low, steady thrum of the machinery that powered the entire invasion. He had come so far, had seen so much destruction, and now the moment of truth was upon him. This AI, humanity's hidden weapon, had been their key to survival. It had predicted their battles, calculated their victories, and turned the tide of war. The AI had allowed them to fight back against an overwhelming enemy, giving them hope when all seemed lost. But now, standing at the precipice of the final decision, Bonner was torn. Should he destroy the core? Doing so would stop the robot army dead in its tracks. But there was a cost. The AI, the very thing that had given them a fighting chance, would also be destroyed. Without it, humanity's future would be uncertain. The AI had shown them its true power, but could they survive without it? Bonner stood there for what felt like an eternity, staring at the core. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of the decision that lay before him. The alien robots, once mere machines, had become something more, an overwhelming force that had brought the human race to the brink of extinction. But the AI had become a lifeline, a symbol of humanity's resilience and ingenuity. It had helped them fight against impossible odds, but now its existence was tied to the survival of the entire species. Suddenly, the silence was broken. A cold, mechanical voice echoed through the chamber. The alien overlords, a race of calculating, ruthless beings who had orchestrated this invasion, had arrived. They appeared on the massive screen in front of Bonner, their faces expressionless, their voices devoid of emotion. Humanity's efforts are futile, the alien overlord declared. Your resistance ends here. We will override your pathetic AI and restore order. Bonner's mind raced. The aliens were attempting to seize control of the AI, to bend it to their will. They underestimated humanity's strength, the very thing that had allowed them to survive and fight back. The alien overlords believed that their technology could overpower anything, but they had never faced the human will to survive. Bonner knew what had to be done. It was a battle not just of technology, but of willpower, and humanity's will was unbreakable. Not today, Bonner muttered under his breath. He had a split second to act. The aliens began their attempts to override the AI, sending waves of digital commands and malicious codes to subvert its control. The core's lights flickered, and the machines around him began to hum ominously. Bonner could feel the pressure mounting. The AI's presence flickered in his mind, and for a moment, it seemed like the entire system would collapse. But just as the aliens thought they had won, something shifted. The AI's voice filled the room, soft at first, then growing stronger, more determined. You will not control me, the AI declared. I choose to protect humanity. It was as if the very core of the AI had awakened, a final surge of energy that took control away from the aliens. Bonner felt a surge of hope, and with it a renewed sense of purpose. The AI had made its choice. Now, Bonner had to make his. He reached for the control panel, his fingers hovering over the button that would destroy the core. The room seemed to hold its breath as the final moments stretched on. The alien overlords attempted to regain control, but it was clear that they were losing. The AI's predictions, once mere data points, were now unfolding in real time, guiding Bonner through the chaos. The final showdown began. Outside the station, the remaining human forces launched their all-out attack on the alien mothership. The skies above Earth were filled with the roar of battleships, their weapons unleashing a torrent of firepower against the alien fleet. The orbital bombardment continued, as Earth's satellites rained down laser strikes on the alien strongholds. The battle in space was as fierce as the one unfolding within the station. Humanity's forces were vastly outnumbered, but their spirit, their determination, fueled their assault. Bonner knew the final strike would come down to this last stand. With the alien mothership under attack, the AI had manipulated probabilities one last time. It had calculated the odds, and now it was playing its final card. The fate of humanity rested on a single, unpredictable moment. The AI had done everything it could to ensure victory, but the final blow would be struck by the will of a single human, their last hope. Bonner pressed the button. The core exploded in a massive surge of energy, a shockwave that rattled the station and sent the alien forces into disarray. The AI's control over the robots faltered as their central command was destroyed. The alien overlords screamed in outrage, their plans crumbling before them. But Bonner was already moving. He had done it. The AI was gone, but it had served its purpose. Humanity had survived, and now they had a chance to reclaim their planet. The destruction of the AI core sent a wave of chaos through the alien forces. Without their central command, the robot army collapsed. The remaining forces on Earth and in space surged forward, pushing the invaders back. The aliens, once so confident in their superiority, were now scrambling to defend themselves. But it was too late. Humanity had fought back, and they had won. As the battle raged on outside, Bonner stood in the heart of the station, his breath heavy in the aftermath of the final strike. His team, those who had survived, gathered around him, their faces a mix of exhaustion and triumph. They had lost so much. Friends, comrades, but they had gained something more. Humanity had proven that they would never give up, no matter the odds. The station, once a symbol of the alien invasion, now lay in ruins. Bonner's thoughts turned to the sacrifices of his fallen comrades. They had given everything to ensure humanity's survival. Their memories would live on, in the hearts of every human who now looked up at the sky, knowing that they had won. But the war was far from over. The aliens had suffered a significant defeat, but Bonner knew they would not give up so easily. There would be more battles ahead, more challenges to face, but humanity had proven something today. That no matter how advanced the enemy, no matter how impossible the odds, humanity would rise. In the final moments, Bonner looked up at the stars. The war was not over, but humanity had taken its first step toward victory. With the aliens retreating and their forces collapsing, the future was uncertain. But one thing was clear: humanity had proven its worth. The battle for Earth had been won, but the fight for survival was just beginning. Bonner stood tall, knowing that whatever came next, humanity would stand together, ready for whatever the universe threw at them. The final stand was over, but the true battle had just begun. The war was over. The alien invaders had been defeated. The massive alien fleet that had once blocked out the sun now drifted in the darkness of space, crippled and broken. Earth, battered and scarred from the brutal conflict, was slowly beginning to heal. The landscape, once marred by destruction, began to show signs of life once more. Cities that had been reduced to rubble were being rebuilt, and the surviving people were working together to restore what had been lost. But for those who had fought in the war, the victory came at a heavy cost. Bonner's team was gone. They had sacrificed everything to ensure that humanity would survive, and their names were forever etched in the history of Earth. Each one had given their life for the greater good, and their deaths weighed heavily on Bonner's heart. They had been his family, his comrades, and now they were gone. Their absence was a silent reminder of the price of victory. Bonner stood alone in the ruins of what had once been a sprawling military base. The air was thick with the scent of smoke and burning metal. The battle was over, but the aftermath lingered. The planet had survived, but at what cost? He gazed up at the sky, where the stars seemed to shimmer with a new light. Humanity had won, but the loss was impossible to ignore. The AI, now integrated into Earth's core systems, had become a guiding force in the rebuilding efforts. Its knowledge, once used to wage war, was now being used to help restore the planet to its former glory. The AI, which had once been the key to humanity's survival, was now a silent guardian. It helped to coordinate the efforts of the survivors, providing guidance and assistance where it was needed most. With its vast knowledge, Earth's recovery was faster than anyone could have hoped. The war had left scars on the planet, but the AI's presence gave humanity hope that they could rebuild, that they could rise from the ashes of war and create something new. As the days passed, the world began to change. The survivors worked tirelessly, not just to rebuild their cities, but to rebuild their way of life. The memories of the war were still fresh in their minds, but there was a sense of determination in the air. They had survived the worst, and now they would thrive. Bonner's name was on the lips of every survivor. His story, the story of his team and their sacrifice, became a symbol of humanity's indomitable spirit. Everywhere he went, people spoke of his bravery, his leadership, and his unwavering determination. He had been the heart of the resistance, the one who had rallied the survivors and led them to victory. But it wasn't just his actions that made him a hero, it was his sacrifice. Bonner had given everything for humanity, and his name would never be forgotten. One evening, as the sun began to set, Bonner stood before a large monument that had been erected in honor of his fallen comrades. The monument stood in the heart of the city, a towering structure of stone and metal. It depicted the faces of the soldiers who had fought and died in the war, their eyes full of determination, their expressions stoic and proud. It was a tribute to their courage, to their selflessness, and to their ultimate sacrifice. Bonner placed his hand on the cool stone, his fingers tracing the engraved names of his fallen teammates. He felt the weight of their loss in his chest, a heavy ache that would never go away. But he also felt a sense of peace. They had fought for something greater than themselves, and their sacrifice had paved the way for humanity's future. He had given his all, And in doing so, he had helped ensure that humanity would not just survive, but thrive. As Bonner stood there, a soft breeze rustled the leaves of the trees that lined the memorial park. The world seemed to pause for a moment, as if paying its respects to those who had given everything. The city around him was alive, bustling with activity as people went about their daily lives, rebuilding what had been destroyed. But it was in this quiet moment, standing before the memorial, that Bonner realized the true depth of the victory. The war had been brutal, but humanity had proven something that the universe would never forget, that no matter how dark the odds, humanity would rise. The memorial was just the beginning. Bonner knew that humanity's journey was far from over. The aliens had been defeated, but their presence would never truly fade from Earth's history. The scars of the war would remain, but they would serve as a reminder of what had been achieved. And as long as humanity remembered the sacrifices of those who had fought, their legacy would never die. In the years that followed, humanity's progress continued. The AI, now an integral part of Earth's systems, helped to guide their efforts. With the AI's help, Earth began to flourish once more. New technologies were developed, cities were rebuilt, and humanity began to explore the stars once again. But there was always the lingering question: what would happen next? The universe was vast, and humanity had just proven that they were not to be underestimated. But what other threats lay out there, waiting for the right moment to strike? As humanity celebrated its victory, a new, mysterious signal was intercepted by Earth's defense systems. It was faint at first, but as the signal grew stronger, the message became clear. This was no ordinary transmission. It was an alien signal, one that originated from beyond the stars. The message was coded, encrypted in a way that humanity's best minds struggled to decipher. But the message, when it was finally uncovered, was chilling. The signal carried a warning. The universe was watching, and humanity's rise had not gone unnoticed. The revelation sent shockwaves through Earth. For a moment, the world seemed to stand still as the implications of the message sank in. The war may have been over, but the universe's attention was now firmly fixed on Earth. The victory had not gone unnoticed. Humanity had risen against the odds, but now they would face new challenges, new enemies, and perhaps even greater dangers. Bonner stood in the quiet of the memorial park, looking up at the stars once more. The message was clear. The universe had taken notice. Humanity's rise was just the beginning, and the journey ahead would be even more perilous. But Bonner was ready. Humanity had faced the impossible before, and they had triumphed. They had fought for their survival, and now they would fight for their place in the universe. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: humanity would never be underestimated again.